This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, Shard? This is Steven, your host with Fantology Podcast. I have my lifelong friend Josh here, and we're talking about the Sunlit Man by Sanderson, aka Secret Project 4, which basically brings the year of Sanderson to a close. It's been a fun year. We've got 4 unexpected books, and the most recent and the final one I thought was another solid entry into the Cosmere. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, and just to kind of put a bow on it, there's also the 4th book in the what series is that?
Skyward. I don't know. I can't remember
Skyward.
if there's an actual like series name, but
I think there is one. But yeah, but the 4th Skyward book. So not quite the year Sanderson isn't quite over. For
That's
most
fair.
authors, if you get 4 books in a year, then you'd think that was a decent year. But
right,
nope.
and he's still
Sanderson-
got his convention in a couple weeks here.
yeah. So, but yeah, his Kickstarter is over. I might have some hot takes on this book, kind of.
Okay. Let's start with kind of a high level. So yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure, just high level. I think it wasn't my favorite Secret Project. In fact, I think it was my 3rd favorite. I didn't like it as much as Yumi or as much as Tress. Yeah.
Okay.
And so of course it's not like bad at all. I don't know. It has everything that you'd think I would like with Sanderson. Like, it's a faster pace. Sanderson, I really like all of what Sanderson puts out, and I do like Westerns. Like, I've read all of the Gunslinger series by Stephen King. I mean, I guess I haven't read a ton of Westerns, but like, I'm not opposed to the format overall. But something just didn't quite like click for me. I don't know if it was the protagonist that didn't really quite work, but it just didn't really hold my attention the way that the other projects did.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Since you ranked your 4 secret projects, I'll say I liked Yumi the most, and then this one, and then Tress, and then kind of in a distant 4th was the Frugal Wizard thing, which I think was just kind of a misfire. But maybe that's a little bit of I don't know if I'd say that's a hot take, but a lot of people really love Tress, and I thought it was just like okay. And but Yumi I thought was the best.
I think Yumi was my favorite as well. With Tress being a close second, and this being a not distant 3rd, but like if Yumi is like I would say is probably like an 8.5, Tress like an 8, this would be like a 7, probably.
Yeah, I would say this is like a 7.5 book for me. It's like really average. Would I reread it? Probably not, unless I was really committed.
I might reread it.
Read.
Yeah, I might reread it after Stormlight 5, and after like if we do find out
like way into the future.
Yeah. If to contextualize this a bit more, which I think will kind of lead into kind of a broader conversation about Cosmere connections with this book. But that will necessitate more spoilers. So I don't know if we want to get into spoilers.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I think I could see myself rereading this book in like 10 years when we're well into the 2nd era of Stormlight, and we probably have the next era of Mistborn out, and we're starting to get into more of future Cosmere. I think it could be interesting once again to see what's going on here.
Depending on what happens with the character of Nomad in Stormlight Archive. Like, up until this point, I haven't been too connected to that character. I'm trying to keep it spoiler light still. But so if I get really invested in his storyline and like Stormlight, then I might want to come back and reread this after being more invested in that character. Is my only thinking.
Once you get invested, huh?
Yeah.
Once I
get my skip capacity up to to whatever BUs or whatever the unit was.
Yeah, whatever the Sanderson science is in this book. All right, let's do a quick pause for an ad break, and then we will continue on with more of a full spoiler review. Okay, so here we are with Nomad /Sigzil /Zelyn And like you said, we saw him in Stormlight. We've seen him a lot in Stormlight. He's been, kind of he's Hoyd's apprentice. And he's kind of an interesting character for me in Stormlight. But honestly, there are so many characters in Stormlight and so many that are more interesting that he's really, a solid side character. And so I was definitely not opposed, and I enjoyed the time that he got here to kind of shine as more of a main. And I'm really interested to see what's happened in the intervening years slash like centuries. I don't know if we actually know how long exactly it's been, but I thought, this look ahead was really interesting. And that's the thing that I enjoyed the most was this story and kind of all the questions that it raised as to what has happened since we last saw the Cosmere.
Yeah, that's really what I'm really concerned about, kind of, is, it seems like something drastic has happened.
Yeah, seems like things are bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, bad enough that you have members of Bridgeport breaking their oaths. It seems like that was more of maybe just him. Like, I don't know if there was like something massive that happened, but maybe like another desolation or something. I don't know, but
I'm sure we could do some speculation as to what happened with Kaladin. There's a few times where Sigzil thought that Kaladin was there, and he had kind of this inkling of hope, like, could it be? And does that mean Kaladin is dead or like imprisoned in some alternate? Who knows, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if we can really conclude anything.
Yeah, I mean, he has been over to Damnation, it seems like, quite a bit. He mentions how cold it is there and stuff. So there seems to be like kind of worlds colliding a little bit over on Roshar. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a big question mark, right?
And I think we need to say before we get into much speculation, which we probably won't do a ton, honestly, because we are fans of the Cosmere. We've read a lot of the books, but at this point, you almost need a degree in Sanderson books to really like.
I feel like we have a bachelor's degree in the Cosmere, but you really kind of need a master's degree or a graduate degree to get all the connections.
Like, we understand the theories here, but in order to propose anything new, we definitely do not have sufficient education. So check out stuff like 17th Shard if you're really wanting like an in-depth dive into this means this means that, whatever. We'll just kind of give you a high level of, did we like the book? What stuck out to us?
Yeah. I do think, in terms of kind of a meta conversation about it, do you think that it pulled it down, like all the connections? Do you think it lifted it up? What do you think in terms of the connections to the wider Cosmere?
I thought it made this book better. I don't know if I would have been interested in a Sigzil Western book in the future without the connections into the stuff that really matters. It's easy to make the Marvel connection, right? Because both are extended universes. I feel with Marvel sometimes, especially with the more recent movies, they just like stuff in all of these cameos and connections into stuff that matters in order to make me like, in order to try to convince me that I care about this weird movie that I'm watching, just because like maybe it's important to stuff that I actually care about. So in that case, I think that's thumbs down, the way that Marvel's doing that. Here, I'll say, it's kind of similar. It got me to care about the book more. I guess that maybe I'm not entirely sure what my conclusion is on this, but those are some random thoughts. Take those some thoughts for what it will. Yeah. For what you will.
I also feel like it kind of brought this book down a little bit, with just because it pulled me away from the narrative of this book, trying to like fit pieces together. Like, okay,
like you would have preferred this story to be strong enough to just stand on its own.
A little bit. Yeah. And I feel like it was, and I don't feel like I read this. So like, I would have read this either way. And at this point, it's hard to say, would I read this either way? Because I like 95% of what Sanderson writes. So I'm just it's whatever he puts out as an instant read. Or am I going to read this because it's a Cosmere book? and I guess I just answered my own question because I haven't been keeping up on like the Skyward books, so I don't necessarily instant read everything Sanderson puts out. So I guess it is kind of just because it's a Cosmere book. But I don't think that's a bad thing either. Like, but where more what I think where I think that the issues kind of were at for me was it pulled me out of the narrative to being like, okay, so I remember at the ending, and this is, I guess we're moving into like pretty just broad Cosmere spoilers. So if you are really spoiler sensitive, or if you're not current with the Cosmere, then you might want to dip out. But like, I was like, okay, so at the ending of the Lost Metal, they had like struck like a group of Skadrians had like struck out to go study the Cosmere with the Khandra. So I was kind of like waiting for like, oh, is a Khandra gonna pop up in here, or like, are the one of these characters gonna be a like just kind of like thinking about all these things in the back of my mind. Of course, the whole kind of first part of the book, you're trying to figure out who Nomad is before you're just told that it's Sigzil. I'm sure tons of people put that together before the reveal. I didn't, but anyway, so those are kind of my thoughts of like, I feel like in some ways all the Cosmere connections were pulling me out of the narrative of this book.
Did you know that Zelyn was a thing in the Sanderson verse before reading the book?
Yes, I had read an article about some sort of Zelyn thing happening. I think it was when the pre-release chapters were released. People were theorizing that Nomad was Zelyn, or had confirmed that Nomad was Zelyn or something. And so there was that connection in the back of my mind. And I remember I watched his Elden Ring playthrough, and I remember that rung a bell, and then it was his Elden Ring character was named Zelyn.
Yeah, he uses Zelyn as his gamer tag, I think, for most things.
Yeah. So yes, the name Zelyn had I remember hearing before. But
so the Brotherwise Games is doing a little miniature Cosmere thing right now, and that was also a Kickstarter. And so they have a bunch of figurines, right, of the different Cosmere and Stormlight characters. I think mostly Stormlight characters. And one of the bonuses that they added in was Zelyn, and he looks really fierce. And I mean, he looks like an enemy, essentially, like a big bad. And so I didn't realize. I mean, I knew that Sigzil was Nomad going in because I had read the preview chapters that were released, but I did not realize that he was also Zelyn. And so I was confused for a second, because in my mind I was like, okay, Zelyn is an enemy here, but it's also Sigzil. But I mean, Sigzil sounds like he got up to some bad stuff
or something. Point, he's somebody's enemy. Because do we really know that what was that group that was chasing him? The
Night something, the Night Brigade.
Night Brigade,
is that right?
Yeah, like we don't really know if they're good or bad. Like they might be good, but they're kind of the antagonists in this story. But I mean, it's hinted that they would kill like millions of people just to get to Nomad. So probably not good if they're like on some Death Star type stuff. But
definitely seems like we're getting into the end game of the Cosmere here, and the Dawn Shards are now kind of the Infinity Stones that we're going to be seeing at the end of the Cosmere.
That's a good point.
So going full circle with the Marvel analogies, we've seen Dawn Shards before. I think we're starting to like slowly get an understanding of how important they are, but they haven't been a big thing in a mainline Cosmere book yet. So I wonder if we'll start to see them in a Stormlight, maybe a Stormlight 5. We'll get some mention of Dawn Shards.
Yeah, we'll see. But that would be interesting if it's all these factions start to assemble these Dawn Shards. And then there was reference to like the Ghost Bloods, right? On the ship. Wasn't one of the members there? Wasn't one of the
I don't actually remember if Ghost Bloods were brought up in this book or not.
They weren't by name, but one of them mentioned like, oh, you would just give away that secret or something like that. And I think that it had mentioned that they had like a marking that I think was the Ghost Bloods marker.
The diamond tattoo thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
would assume they're still
Yeah.
around.
But like you're getting these type of like, okay, so the Ghost Bloods are still a player. You got this like Ninth Brigade thing that looks like they're going to be a pretty substantial player. You get Bridge 4 that they're making their mark on the Cosmere. Which is pretty awesome, like the fact that within the last like 15 years, we've kind of made this progress in the Cosmere.
I do feel like, and obviously it's easy to say this because this book is really disconnected from the timeline that we're familiar with. But we've been, for years, we've been reading these Mistborn and Stormlight and, a few of the other Cosmere entries. And it's just, eras before where we're at. And I feel really established in, okay, here are the current happenings of the Cosmere. Here's what's at stake right now. We're all about odium and Trell and those types of things. And now we're just like way far ahead and there's these new factions. And so it was a little jarring to me in that way because I'm used to feeling like relatively comfortable in understanding the larger picture. And then all of a sudden I'm like off in some Malazan book where I don't even know, who these different gods and factions are and what's at stake. And so in that sense, I was like, yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with this, but at the same time, it was just one book and I'm sure we'll catch up to it eventually. So it's not a big deal to me.
Yeah. I think it's kind of just like a flash forward type thing. Like you can say, hey, this is kind of where we're heading, kind of get prepared for it. Like we're just going to turn into maybe some more like sci-fi fantasy combos here.
Mm-hmm.
But a shard blade, like that's why I like is that like you still see that like a shard blade and plate is still going to be like one of the most powerful weapons in the Cosmere, even with like this whole like science fiction element adapted to it. Like still like the weapons that are super powerful are still going to be super powerful, which I like.
He was able to use the plate especially in some kind of new and cool ways that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah
It had that Sanderson unique science mark that seems to be popping up in every single one of his new books. And we got a little lecture on what's going on with the science of the world and how we're going to use that to solve the big problem. And I think those things are fine. Sometimes it does feel like a little formulaic in the sense of, okay, we know there's going to be a new science thing. We know that someone's going to figure it out and explain it right at the opportune time and kind of save the world. Might be nice to like, I don't know, switch that up a little bit.
I feel like Yumi switched that up a pretty big amount. Like you still got that a little bit, but like it was much like more of a softer system, and it was more of the characters had to make that internal progression, like character progression versus like figuring out how the science worked. They had to figure out like themselves, much more than the science.
Yeah,
like
I can see that.
Painter always knew how to paint, but it was how could he, you know what I mean? And same thing with Trest, kind of like much more whimsical. So I think that we are getting
that's fair.
That kind of switch up. But yes, this did seem very typical. Like it seemed very similar to the Lost Metal, which is probably the one where you're very thinking of like, okay, here's like a chunk of the book that's like all devoted to like experimenting, explaining the science, explaining like enough like real world science. Like,
and Rhythm of War was a lot like that.
And yeah, you're right.
You could even go like back to something like Elantris, where they do that for a while, and then all of a sudden they figure out the big thing that saves the world, right? So it was a very Sanderson book, and I do have to. I mean, he wrote this relatively quickly. I think we've seen that all of the secret projects were, maybe a little bit unpolished compared to some of his bigger books, and not that it's like, not that it makes them terrible or anything, but I think maybe a little rough around the edges, still solid. Yeah
a kind of a Kickstarter product, a successful Kickstarter.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can look back at this and obviously the Kickstarter was huge, the biggest Kickstarter ever in the history of Kickstarter. And I mean, I'm going to say it was a success. Like, not every Kickstarter do you really get what was promised. And in this case, I think that they did a really good job at Dragonsteel. Like, Brandon did write 4 solid books, 3 solid books, one bit of a clunker, but 3 very solid books, entries to the Cosmere. People read them, enjoyed them. They're going to be talked about for a while. They're relevant. They're not just like side things that no one cares about. And then he also did a bunch of stuff like with all the swag in the boxes, and that was all high quality things as well. So all in all, like, it's A for the like A minus for the Kickstarter effort, and really solid effort. And this kind of concludes it all and does so admirably.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'd say easy A. Like, and it's not like, in my opinion, the third secret project wasn't bad. In my opinion, it just wasn't great.
Frugal Wizard,
but Frugal Wizard, like,
yeah, I thought it was bad.
I mean, there's plenty of people that liked it, I think. I know it's not like the predominant. I don't know, man. I'm just saying, like, it was a fine book. Like,
I feel, I really love a lot of
on
Sanderson's book. A lot of his books, right? Like, I gush about a lot of his stuff. So I feel totally justified in saying I did not like that book.
I'm not saying I'm not saying you have to like it. In fact, I think it would be one that you specifically wouldn't like with your tastes. But like, I don't know. I'm just saying that, like, I don't think it was like if somebody promised to write a book and then gave you that book, like, I don't think that that's like, you could say that they didn't write a book. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, no, I'm not saying he didn't write a book. I'm just, it wasn't my favorite. It was probably one of the worst things that he's put out ever.
Fair enough.
The other 3 were solid. Anyway, let's kind of get back to Sunlit Man a little bit. So what did you like? What stood out to you?
Yeah. So Sunlit Man. Yeah. Back to Sunlit Man. I think that, the relationship between Ox and Sigzil / Nomad, I think at times it would get a little bit, like, it would wear on me a little bit, but mostly it was fun to see that kind of Spren human connection. And I did overall, I thought that was a very fun part of the book. I also really, I thought it was cool to see this plight of this kind of group of people from, what's the name of the planet from Shadows of Silence?
Threnody.
Yeah, like, that's kind of like people that were just,
that's a good point.
Kind of on their journey in the wilderness.
Good
like,
continuation.
Cool.
Yeah. That's a good novella, and something that's kind of been off on its own for a while. And now we have a connection into another thing. So yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, like, in my opinion, I'm trying to get the right word. Like, the Israelites, when they were on there, like, in the wilderness, I don't know what the term for. I feel like there's a term that I'm not getting, but like, this kind of but like, this people that were out on, in the wilderness, so to say, like,
a nomadic journey, you could say.
Yeah, I guess, but like, I mean, that was cool to see them, like, stranded
appropriately
on this world. named. yeah, but to see them stranded on this world, like, looking for some sort of like a messianic figure, like, that was pretty cool, I thought. And they put all this faith in him. It was a typical, like, he didn't really want it, but he needed to, provide whatever assistance he could. I thought his arc was well done. I don't know. I think that it covered all those basics really well. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the Nomad journey from beginning to end, and it was a really short time period. I mean, I don't know exactly how many days we're talking about this story happened over, but you could tell this was a figure that came in with the weight of, a lifetime weighing down on his soul, and was able to kind of make some progression through that at great personal sacrifice with Ox. And that was all pretty well done. Yeah. And we talked about this earlier, but just to highlight one interesting Cosmere thing that I picked up on was Ox was a high sprint, right, from the Skybreaker order, and Sigzil, when we last saw him, had bonded an honor sprint and was, currently a wait. Why can I not remember the order? Windrunner,
or
obviously.
Windrunner, sorry.
Windrunner, duh. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So he was a Windrunner, and so he broke his oaths, or his old honor sprint died, and now he bonded and became a Skybreaker. Like, obviously a lot happened there, and and furthermore, he like sacrificed that other sprint, so he's gone through two of them now, and in the meantime held the Dawn Shard. And so there's just so much history with his character, and that was fun to kind of explore a little bit. Obviously, we still have a lot of questions, but then to see him progress into someone who seems a little bit more at peace was nice.
Yeah. It seems, I thought a cool part was when Ox was like, I swear my oaths too. Like that was kind of neat. We've just mainly seen it from like a human perspective. And I guess a little bit in Rhythm of War, or in
Rhythm of War.
Yeah. We saw more Spren a little bit, but I thought that was a cool stark contrast of Ox being like, if there's a way for me to keep my oaths, I need to do it. Sorry. And then I think that the other fun thing was just the way that he interacted with what are their names? The sisters. I can't remember their names.
But Rubik and Elegy.
Yeah. Kind of felt like how he kind of fell in love a little bit, but wouldn't let himself fully commit. Or I don't know if he fell in love, but like there's that will they, won't they? And then he was like, nope, not going to do it. Which ironically that felt like more of one of Sanderson's more natural romances that had developed, and then he noped out of there. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it was the correct choice for him. He knew that he would just be messing with her if anything was to happen.
Yeah.
But no, I did like the relationship there, and I thought his relationship with all of the Beaconites developed naturally. He was, a reluctant savior figure at first, and then kind of came to realize that, this is still worth doing, and he still could be that hero that he wanted to be ages ago, right? That he thought he had lost all opportunity to be. So that, yeah, I mean, just connecting back to his arc, I think the people of Beacon and Rubik and Elegy especially, and also those the old women who were like the leaders, I don't remember their names. They had the weird Threnodite names. They were another kind of side character that the one I don't remember her name. It's been too long. Anyway, that whole relationship with those people really kind of made the book for me.
Yeah, I agree. And then when he was like, oh yeah, I'm at least as old as they are, and then you're like, oh yeah, he has some time on him, like he's pretty old.
Right.
But I think that did serve to kind of give us a little bit of a age on him. Like he's not like ancient. He's like, maybe 150 years old or so,
Yeah, there's got to be a timeline out there somewhere. I guess maybe that's something we should check out. 17th Charts probably put it together.
I'm sure they have it together. Get some arcanists on the hunt.
So one other thing was, this was a very fast-paced book. Sanderson doesn't write a ton of super fast-paced. There's often an extended period of slow burn in his 100-page books. So, but in this one, I mean, it was just action all the way through, and that could set up some interesting stuff for Stormlight 5, because we know we assume that's really just going to be over the course of like 10 days. So that should be pretty
I don't think it is
as well.
Personally,
you don't think you think there'll be the 10 days will be up and then they'll go into.
I think the 10 days are gonna. I think in the first fifth of he breaks those up into 5 parts, right? Usually,
yeah.
I think the first fifth is going to be those 10 days, and then the climax of the first fifth of the book is going to be the duel with Odium
Oh
That's
wow,
my
that's pretty okay. That's
yeah.
fast. Okay. Yeah, I mean, come back to
And
us
then
in about a year from now
I'm like
when
pretty confident. I don't know why. I'm just like that's fully
okay.
what I'm expecting. And then they're gonna lose the duel, and then the rest of the 4/5 of the book will be them
Hmm.
trying to regain some sort of, you know, whatever the rest of the story is going to be. But
Right, right, right. No, yeah, check back at Phantology in
that's a
rough
Phantology guarantee. Yeah.
roughly a year from now to see how Josh's Phantology guarantee turned out. We'll have to do some at least Stormlight rereads. Maybe I don't know. I don't want to commit to a larger Cosmere reread because honestly, at this point, it's getting really big. But definitely Stormlight reread and some primers and pre-release chapters and all that. We'll be pumped for
Oh yeah.
Stormlight 5.
Nice.
Knights of Wind and Truth is the
Yep.
working title. Yeah. Okay. Anything else to mention from Canonical? From I mean, we had the Cinder King. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of a weaker villain, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just kind of a typical mustache twirling. I want to control everyone,
Mm-hmm.
and gets off on torturing people. Like, I don't know. It was fine.
Yeah.
The villain didn't need to be developed. The villain was the main part was him trying to overcome his own holdups.
Yeah. It
You
was
know.
very much a trying to think back to my like high school English classes. It was more of a character versus self conflict than
Yeah.
a character
Yeah.
versus character, right? Or
Yeah,
like
for sure.
it was a rare character versus environment or whatever that one was. That was the one that we could never, there's hardly any stories like this, but this is a good one where it's like character versus the world.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Like his main thing was trying to get get the magic back so they could skip off the world. I did want to point out Sanderson has said that he doesn't, I feel like he said he doesn't read a ton of like progression fantasy or like lit RPG. Um,
Hmm.
and this almost started, I mean, I don't read a lot of it either. I read Cradle. But this almost started to kind of feel like that with his like percent, capacity full or whatever on
Oh
like
yeah.
trying to
Okay.
gain more. Yeah. Just trying to do things to gain more power
Hmm.
so that he could accomplish a goal. Like, I think that this was maybe Sanderson trying to dabble in that a tiny bit. I don't know if we'll ever get like an actual um lit RPG or something from him, but
Hmm.
yeah, be kind of fun.
I haven't read a ton of lit RPG. I did read I haven't read Cradle, but I read Will White's one of his earlier series. Don't remember what it was called. But yeah, it was total progressionist fantasy. They're like big swords, and the last one there was this big golden city that they had to get into, and initially he was in this like weird house of horrors, and he unlocked additional rooms, and as he did that, he unlocked new skills for himself. Can't remember the name of this.
Sounds like a Will White book.
Yeah, can't
Yeah.
remember the name of this series at all. I need to read Cradle. That Cradle was on my list for the year, and I did not get to it. So I'm glad you guys did. But anyway,
Yeah.
there's been a
Cradle.
lot
Oh
this year.
man, Cradle was so good. All right.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap. We didn't spend a ton of time getting way into the weeds of Sunlit Man. I think most of the discussion for this one revolves around like the greater implications, just to kind of put a bow on it. I thought it was a good book, but I mostly cared about it because of implications.
Yeah, same. I mean, solid. I don't know, solid book, but yeah, it would be hard to be super super excited about it without all the implications.
Yeah. And with Sanderson, you always like he hardly ever puts out anything bad other than Frugal Wizard. So there's always, with a new book coming out, it's going to be at least a 7. And then from there it can only go up. So I think this was I think I gave this what did I say earlier? 7.5. So a little bit better than average Sanderson.
Yeah, totally agree.
I might have to think about that. What is average Sanderson exactly?
I would say
This
average Sanderson is like
this might be average Sanderson.
this might be average Sanderson. I think it's like book 2 of like the second Mistborn series.
Oh, Shadows of Self.
Shadows of Self.
I didn't like that one as much. I feel like that's below average Sanderson.
Below average Sanderson.
I don't know, maybe because that one was better than Alloy of Law, which was below average Sanderson. Okay, anyway, this is devolving quickly. Anyway, let us know what you think average Sanderson is, where this one stacks up in the Cosmere, where it stacks up with all the other secret projects. Let us know what we missed and all the details. If you have a PhD in Cosmere knowledge, sure.
Cosmerology.
Cosmerology. Cosmology is an actual thing, so
Is an actual thing.
Yeah. Anyway, leave us comments on YouTube. You can hop on our Discord. We've got dedicated channels to this and a ton of other fantasy book related stuff. So, all right. Thanks, Josh.
All right. Sweet. See you, Steven.
See you later.